Leading up to January of 2024, Shakoria Ellie had been working as a barista at Harvest and Grounds inside Concourse D at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Shortly before noon, on January the 13th of 2024, she got into an argument with a co-worker about espresso shots. The dispute devolved into a brawl between Ellie and two of her managers, which was recorded and subsequently went viral. The enraged young woman tried to force her way past the two men while shouting, "Give me my stuff!" She at one point grabbed a high-top chair and lifted it over her head as if she was getting to throw with, but one of the men calmly took the stool away from her. Ellie then charged her other manager, who was wearing a red polo shirt, and started swinging at his face but was grabbed and thrown to the ground. Ellie got up and charged him again, only to be removed by the taller worker who fruitlessly tried to talk her down. Still screaming for her stuff, she then sucker-slapped the taller worker across the face. Internet users reacting to the video would later praise the man's restraint. As her manager asked bystanders to call the police, Ellie pretended to walk away. Moments later, she ran towards the counter and jumped over it, whereupon the struggle with the managers resumed. She tried to hit one of them with a metal sheet pan before she broke free and emerged from behind the counter carrying a jacket and a bag. Ellie slipped and fell as she left the premises prior to the arrival of airport security and Atlanta police. Updates indicated that her employment had been terminated, but in spite of her violent behavior, she wasn't charged with any crimes. Number 6. MAA Burden. 25-year-old MAA Burden was found nude outside the Parisians Gentlemen's Club in Dougherty County, Georgia, in the winter of 2014. At around 1 a.m. on February the 1st, deputies came upon Burden in a state of total undress while accompanied by her friend, Malatha Robinson. It was Burden who'd actually placed the 911 call. The woman told responding officers that she and Robinson were exotic dancers at the club and that they'd been kicked out. They'd reportedly gotten into a fight with management after they were accused of being rude to customers. Burden claimed that her bosses threw her out naked and refused to return her clothes. Dougherty County Police Lieutenant Chad Kirkpatrick spoke to other club employees who claimed that Burden had been removed while she was clothed and that she'd undressed outside in an effort to get the club in trouble. Exotic dancing was permitted in Dougherty County, but total nudity was illegal. Parisians did have a business license to operate as a nightclub as well as an alcohol license. The club's Facebook page displayed photos of women in various states of undress, and its logo was that of a scantily clad woman holding onto the Eiffel Tower as though it were a dancing pole. Parisian's owner, Ulysses James, subsequently agreed to close the club while he and the authorities reached an understanding regarding local ordinances. Burden's dispute with management and her alleged attempt to get them in trouble ultimately backfired. The woman was arrested for disorderly conduct by the officers responding to her own 911 call because she kept being belligerent and wouldn't stop yelling profanities. Number 5. Jiao and Wang. In the spring of 2021, a video of a Chinese woman attacking her boss went viral on China's Weibo social media platform, earning millions of views. The woman, only identified as Jiao, confronted her boss, who was named as Wang, for sending her lewd messages. Throughout the clip, which lasted for just over 14 minutes, Wang sat behind his desk, clutching his hands, as Jiao proceeded to strike him in the head with a mop multiple times. Some of the hits were delivered with enough force that water flew from the cleaning tool. Wang, the deputy director of the Poverty Alleviation Department of Beiling District in Heilongjiang Province, barely flinched as Jiao carried out her furious onslaught. Between barrages of mop strikes, the enraged woman paused only to shout at her boss and talk on the phone. Wang tried to apologize for the messages, claiming they were meant as a joke, but she accused him of assault. He remained composed as Jiao smashed a glass picture frame on his head and then hurled several books at his face. In a final act of rage, she picked up a water container and emptied its contents on Wang before launching the container itself at his face. Jiao filed a report with local police regarding her boss's harassing messages. and the findings of an internal investigation concluded the man had life discipline problems. As reported by Asia One, he was fired in the scandal's aftermath and was removed from his position within the country's Communist Party. Officials concluded that Jiao had a mental illness and wasn't disciplined for the attack on her boss. The incident had occurred in the midst of China's own reaction to the #MeToo movement, so Jiao's actions were arguably met with more praise than condemnation. Number 4. Ashley Priola. In May of 2019, Oklahoma exotic dancer Ashley Priola showed up drunk at her workplace at the Red Dog Saloon in Oklahoma City. Her boss, Holly Jones, allowed her to work and dance on stage, but 26-year-old Priola struggled to perform properly and fell over twice. Jones consequently fired her. In the moments that followed, Priola reached for pool balls, grabbing a purple striped number 12 and the cue ball. She launched both at Jones's head and one of them hit the woman on the bridge of her nose. Priola then fled and responding officers found Jones with blood splattered on her tank top, in addition to cuts on her nose and considerable swelling to her face. Jones refused medical attention. The police took Priola into custody from a convenience store nearby. While she was being driven to the Oklahoma County Jail, the dancer continued her hysterics, reportedly offering cops all of her money if they took her home instead of the detention facility. When the officers refused, she attempted to break the police vehicle's window by repeatedly banging her head against it and then kicking it. Priola was subdued and booked on charges of assault with a dangerous weapon as well as assault and battery. Number 3. Naomi Wheeler. In April of 2018, British woman Naomi Wheeler started working as a cleaner at the Blue Dolphin Holiday Park in Filey, North Yorkshire, England. Her manager was Heather Wilkinson, and for the first year, no problems were reported with Wheeler's job performance or behavior. The latter, a self-professed goth, then started misinterpreting messages that Wilkinson sent to all her employees and that she typically ended with an X, meaning a kiss. Wheeler reportedly thought that Wilkinson was pursuing a relationship with her and developed an obsession for her boss. By 2020, she'd begun bombarding the woman with texts and messages stemming from her infatuation. Wheeler at one point even sent her a card with her scent on it. Determined to keep their relationship professional, Wilkinson largely ignored Wheeler's advances. The former didn't hear from the employee until March of 2021, when Wheeler reportedly sent her nasty texts and Facebook messages. It would later emerge that Wheeler had been leading a similar harassment campaign against one of her former secondary school teachers, whom she'd sporadically been stalking for 14 years. Wheeler was eventually referred to a clinical psychiatrist, and during a session in 2021, she claimed that she wanted to kill Wilkinson by stoving her head in and also hammer to death her former teacher. Wheeler had made elaborate plans that involved drawing maps, carrying out Google searches, and acquiring a potential murder weapon. The woman, who was at the time in her early 30s, stated an intention of going through with murders after her appointment was over. The psychiatrist asked her to wait in the room and stepped out to call the police. Upon returning, he found that Wheeler had left. She went to find Wilkinson at the Blue Dolphin Holiday Park. Rob Smith, the park's maintenance manager, saw Wheeler walking onto the premises, and the woman told him that she had an interview with Wilkinson. She was wearing black gothic makeup, boots, and a black leather coat, and carried a beige bag with a hammer inside. Wheeler saw Wilkinson get it in her car, at which point she pulled the hammer out and charged her. But the would-be victim managed to steer her vehicle away from the attack. In the moments that followed, Smith tackled Wheeler to the ground. He reportedly heard her saying, "I told my psychiatrist I was coming to kill Heather. They didn't believe me." The woman was arrested and taken to the Scarborough police station. She was seen by a psychiatric nurse, who she reportedly told that seeing the look of fear on Wilkinson's face gave her a buzz. Wheeler also admitted to officers that she wouldn't stop trying to hurt her former boss if she was let out. In the fall of 2021, she pleaded guilty to stalking, making threats to kill, and possessing an offensive weapon. She was jailed for 4 years in order to serve an extended 2-year period on license. following her eventual release, in addition to receiving a lifetime restraining order that banned her from making contact with her 2 stalking victims. Number 2. David Beckham. Leading up to the early 2000s, the working relationship between soccer superstar David Beckham and his Manchester United boss, Sir Alex Ferguson, had begun to deteriorate. From the manager's perspective, much of the tension was owed to Beckham's growing fame, a partial consequence of his relationship and eventual marriage to pop star Victoria Adams, also known as Posh Spice, of Spice Girls fame. Ferguson began to question Beckham's commitment to soccer. By most accounts, Beckham continued playing in top shape and was widely regarded as a key component in Manchester United's success in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The building tensions between Beckham and Ferguson, however, reached a boiling point on February the 15th of 2003. At the time, Beckham was struggling to regain his spot on United's lineup, having been replaced by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. While in the dressing room following a match against Arsenal, Ferguson berated Beckham for what he'd regarded as a poor performance. Looking back on the incident in the fall of 2023, Beckham remembered verbally retaliating and saying the F word, which infuriated Ferguson. The boss launched a boot, later reported as belonging to Solskjaer, at Beckham. It struck the latter in the head and caused a cut which needed stitches to mend. Recounting his immediate reaction, Beckham said, "I went at him. Someone had to hold me back." The altercation ended without further incident, and in the summer of 2003, Beckham was traded to Real Madrid, reportedly against his wishes of remaining at United. We'll be lining up our compilation about jobs and occupations that went sideways right after number 1. Stick around if you'd like to watch more. Number 1. Victor Hernandez. Leading up to February of 2018, Victor Hernandez worked as a security guard at the company Guardians of the Future in San Francisco de Macorís in the Dominican Republic. According to other employees, Hernandez had a habit of turning up to work severely intoxicated and had been notified several times in the past. On February the 3rd, he was once again drunk on the job when he began fighting with his boss, 58-year-old Jesus Maria Ureña. The incident was captured by a surveillance camera and the 2 men appeared to be engaged in a shouting match. It culminated with Hernandez aiming a shotgun at Ureña and shooting him. As his boss writhed on the floor, Hernandez turned the weapon towards his own chest. The shotgun flew out of his hands as he pressed the trigger. The man didn't collapse and walked out of frame moments before other workers arrived to check on the boss. Alerted by the commotion, Ureña died at the scene and Hernandez died at the hospital. Number 7. Michael and Vicky Roberts. In December of 2009, 25-year-old Vicky Roberts was found strangled at her and her husband's residence in Runcorn, Cheshire, England. Her body had reportedly been bound with duct tape and hidden under a duvet in the garage. When the police became aware of the situation, Vicky's husband, Michael, went on the run. He proceeded to send his wife's friends and family fake text messages from her phone in which he indicated that she'd left him for another man. Despite his efforts to flee from justice, Michael was eventually tracked down and arrested in connection to Vicky's death, which he claimed to have been an accident, precipitated by an intimate game involving a dressing gown cord. Investigators rejected this version of the events, however, and instead offered the explanation that Vicky had discovered an extramarital affair Michael had been having with 2 of his colleagues at the mobile phone retail store where he worked as the assistant manager. It was reported that the man had been cheating on Vicky throughout their engagement, as well as in the days immediately following their wedding. The police contended that Michael resorted to killing his wife in lieu of ending his involvement with his pair of mistresses. Following Michael's 3-week trial at Liverpool Crown Court, he was convicted of murder and consequently jailed for life, with a mandated minimum term of 17 years. Number 6. Bobby and Jerry Holloway. On the evening of June the 10th of 2016, a woman from Blount'sville, Alabama dialed 911 to report that she'd shot her husband. Law enforcement were dispatched to the scene where they found 57-year-old Jerry Holloway suffering from gunshot wounds to the face and chest. He was immediately pronounced dead, and his wife, Bobby, was taken in for questioning. The 60-year-old woman reportedly told investigators that her husband had been verbally abusive during the course of their 35-year marriage and had recently become angry with her, whom he suspected of having an affair with an employee at a local bank. The Holloways had gone to the financial institution in search of a $150,000 loan, which they intended to use to upgrade their chicken houses. While they never closed on the loan, Bobby, her son Chris, and her alleged lover, Danny Goebel, subsequently began plotting how to get Jerry out of the family business, initially by way of divorce. The trio even reportedly discussed the idea of giving Jerry $250,000 to simply leave, but ultimately decided on killing the man who had a $200,000 life insurance policy. Bobby shot her husband twice with a revolver, but was taken into custody before the subsequent stages of her murder plot could come to fruition. The woman, a retired Blount County schoolteacher, was found guilty of murder in early 2020 and consequently faced a minimum 20-year prison sentence. Number 5. Bo and Jennifer Rothwell. Missouri woman Jennifer Rothwell got into a heated argument with her husband Bo about his alleged infidelity on November the 11th of 2019. The 28-year-old woman, who was pregnant at the time, tried to get Bo to reveal the identity of his lover, but he refused. The man later testified that Jennifer proceeded to taunt him that the baby she was carrying wasn't his, and the confrontation then escalated to violence. After entering into what Bo himself labeled a red haze of anger, he struck his wife of 4 years over the head with a mallet, then hit her again as she stumbled towards the garage door, killing her. He subsequently dumped Jennifer's lifeless body in a wooded area located about an hour from their Creve Coeur residence. To cover up the murder, Bo used cleaning supplies to scrub the crime scene and discarded evidence in a dumpster near the highway. In the aftermath, the man reported his wife missing to the authorities, who ultimately identified him as a suspect after finding blood-soaked carpeting during a search of the Rothwell home. It subsequently emerged that prior to her death, Jennifer had conducted a Google search for what to do if your husband is upset you are pregnant. It was also revealed that Bo had created a pros and cons list for ending his marriage to Jennifer only months before he murdered her. In April of 2022, the man was convicted of first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and abandonment of a corpse. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 4. Elizabeth Hart Brown and Stephen Rayner. Jewelry designer Elizabeth Hart Brown and her boyfriend, Stephen Rayner, got into a contentious row upon returning to their shared West London flat after a party on the night of September the 17th of 2016. Court documents indicated that the fight was fueled not only by the copious amounts of alcohol they'd consumed during the course of the evening, but also by an ongoing dispute about Rayner's abusive tendencies and infidelity. As the argument escalated, it culminated with Hart Brown fatally stabbing Rayner 3 times with a kitchen knife, while her children slept in bedrooms only feet away, months prior to the deadly altercation. 27-year-old Hart Brown had sent her boyfriend a WhatsApp message in which she accused him of being verbally disparaging as well as hitting and humiliating her on a regular basis. The woman cited Rayner's purported abuse as the reason for the deterioration of their relationship and also claimed to have stabbed him in self-defense on the night of their fateful row. However, prosecutors offered a different perspective on the couple's volatile relationship, identifying Hart Brown as the primary antagonist who stimulated their arguments with her paranoia and jealous allegations of infidelity. During the course of the 6-week murder trial, the woman detailed how she'd feared for her life after Rayner had bitten her face and waterboarded her in a bathtub. Following 15 hours of deliberation by an Old Bailey jury, Hart Brown was ultimately acquitted of murder and allowed to walk free. Number 3. Gayen Morris and Andre Smith. Just after midnight on June the 3rd of 2022, Indiana police were called to the parking lot of an Indianapolis pub called Tilly's. Officers came upon 26-year-old Andre Smith lying on the ground underneath a vehicle. A statement issued by the city's Metropolitan Police Department indicated that it appeared as though the man had been run over by the car, which reportedly belonged to his girlfriend, Gayen Morris, also 26 at the time. Emergency responders rushed to the scene to render aid to Smith, who was ultimately pronounced dead. A short time later, his official cause of death was ruled as traumatic asphyxia. Investigators subsequently spoke with several witnesses, one of whom detailed how Morris had allegedly tracked the victim down that night using an Apple AirTag. After seeing Smith with another woman, Morris flew into a rage and attacked her boyfriend's female companion with an empty wine bottle. Smith intervened before the bottle made contact with the other woman, and the three of them were subsequently asked to leave the bar. It was at that point that Morris got into her vehicle and clipped her boyfriend before allegedly backing over him. She then pulled forward and struck him for a third time, inflicting his mortal wounds in the process. Following the vehicular assault, Morris got out and pursued the other woman on foot, but was intercepted by the responding officers, who placed her under arrest. The woman was formally charged with her boyfriend's murder, to which she initially entered a not guilty plea. Number 2. Zoe Davis and Christopher Pickford. On July the 7th of 2018, Zoe Davis took a knife to her abusive boyfriend at his Greater Manchester flat after he told her of an affair he was having. Court records indicated that the 35-year-old woman was consequently arrested on suspicion of attempted murder, resulted in her losing the custody of her 3 children. During the 5 years Davis had been romantically involved with Christopher Pickford leading up to the attack, the couple reportedly had several domestic violence incidents, including one that led to the man spending 2 months behind bars. Although 33-year-old Pickford had been banned from making contact with Davis due to a restraining order, they eventually reconciled their differences and began seeing each other again. In the early hours of July the 7th, the couple's friend, who was staying at the apartment with them, went downstairs to find Davis frantically trying to stymie the profuse bleeding from an apparent knife wound on her boyfriend's chest. Paramedics were called to the scene, where they found the woman repeatedly muttering, "I'm sorry," over the critically injured victim, whose condition was ultimately stabilized at the hospital. Doctors later detailed how Pickford's wound was mere inches away from his heart. During the case's legal proceedings at Minshall Street Crown Court, Davis admitted unlawful wounding and received a suspended 2-year jail sentence as punishment. Number 1. Todd and Amy Mullis. Iowa resident and mother of 3, Amy Mullis was found in critical condition at her family's farm near Earlville on November the 10th of 2018. Her husband, Todd, to whom she'd been married for nearly 15 years, told the police that she'd had a freak accident in which she'd fallen on a rake and been impaled. The 42-year-old man claimed to have found her unresponsive in the shed, at which point their son rushed her to the hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Amy's husband was quick to attribute her death to recurring dizzy spells she'd been having, which had supposedly caused her to lose her balance and fall on the sharp-edged tool. However, an autopsy subsequently revealed the presence of 6 puncture wounds on the woman's body, and her death was officially classified as a homicide. During the ensuing police investigation, it emerged that the Mullises had been experiencing marital problems leading up to Amy's death, and had even stopped sharing a bed after she'd been caught having an affair. Todd's discovery of Amy's extramarital relationship had caused her to fear for her life, and she'd expressed concerns to her friends that he might try to kill her. Investigators uncovered that the man had searched killing unfaithful women online, and had even researched what happened to cheating Aztec wives while allegedly plotting his wife's murder. Todd was ultimately arrested on murder charges, and in September of 2019 was convicted of the crime, for which he received a life sentence with no chance of parole. Thanks for watching. If you could fight anyone in history, alive or dead, who would you choose and why? Let us know in the comments section below.